Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In case you missed it, I recently tried out acrylic painting for the very first time, so it's a completely new medium for me. And for the purpose of today's video and just to explore the medium a little bit more, I decided to do a much larger piece. So this is a 12 by 18 canvas which I've primed with gesso. If you'd like to watch the entire process and how I explored the medium, please check out my previous video with the link above. But today I decided to paint this bird portrait, which is A, the biggest bird portrait I've ever done, and B, it's with a medium that I'm fairly new to and I'm pretty underconfident with. So this was quite an experiment, quite a risk, and very early I got pretty frustrated with the painting process. As you can see, I started off with the background and I got really frustrated very early. Like, I stopped recording because I had to lean over and paint the background. It just wasn't working the way I wanted it to. So I just stopped recording at that point. I was extremely frustrated. I wasn't able to get the colors to look the way I wanted, and I wasn't able to blend it the way I wanted. So I just left it aside for a while. I was quite frustrated, and that's when one of my Instagram friends, Riddhi from Riddhi's Art Desk, who, by the way, you should definitely follow, her artwork is beautiful. She sent me a message because I had posted something on my stories, and she replied, and I said that acrylics are really frustrating. And her reply was that they're very easy once you get to know them and stop trying to make them act like another medium, which basically goes for every other medium too. And this, I think, is the crux of this video that I wanted to talk about as we watch this speed paint of me exploring acrylic paints, because I think that's the number one mistake that we tend to make when it comes to taking any sort of risk with our art. If you've been painting for a while, or for that matter creating art with any sort of medium for a while, you may have reached this point of comfort with your art style, and that's kind of where I'm at on my journey. I have finally reached a point where I can kind of define my art style, which is not where I was a year ago, but I've spent a lot of time exploring in my sketchbook and trying to understand what defines me as an artist. And what typically happens for most artists is they reach that point with a specific medium. For me, that medium is gouache. For you, that might be watercolor or acrylics or anything else. So we reach this point of comfort, which is usually married with both our art style and the medium that we love to work with. Once you're there, it becomes very scary to use a different medium. It becomes very scary to explore out of your style in whatever sense that may be. It could be exploring a completely new color palette even. But in today's video, I'm going to talk about it in the context of a new medium, because for me, I found that particularly scary, especially because it's a medium that I honestly have never used before my previous YouTube video, and this is the second time I'm using it in my life. In fact, I found the first time to be a little less daunting. I feel like the first time you use a new medium, you kind of go in with zero expectations, and then whatever you create feels satisfactory, because how bad can it really be? Especially if you've been practicing art for a while and you know some sort of fundamentals. How bad can it really be, right? So the first time you create something, it's usually more of a pleasurable experience, and then the second time you tend to bring in some expectations, and I think that's one of the mistakes I made. I brought in some expectations of how I wanted this to turn out, which I should not have had in my mind. But anyway, what we're getting to is trying to make one medium behave like another medium, which is the number one mistake artists make when they are trying to transition or play with a completely new medium. Our first instinct is to treat it the same way that we treat our favorite medium. Again, in my case, that is gouache, and for you that might be watercolor or acrylics or whatever else. I have seen this mistake with my own students who learn gouache painting from me, and it's something I keep telling them. I tell them not to treat gouache as they would treat watercolors, because then you're going to be unhappy with the results, because gouache is its own medium. It behaves in its own way, it does its own thing, and you have to embrace the medium for what it is. So I tell this to my students a lot, but somehow when it comes to applying it to myself, it got a little more tricky than that. It definitely was frustrating, and the moment Riddhi pointed this out to me, I realized that it was totally true. I was trying to make acrylics behave like gouache, and that was leading to most of my frustrations. So after that failed background painting attempt, I said, okay, I'm going to come back to this background. Let me move on to everything else. And I also realized that I would like to work with a fluid retardant medium, which is what I used once I repainted the background. And the retardant basically slows down the drying time of acrylics, which helped me a lot, because I realized one of my number one struggles with the medium was that it was drying a little too fast. And with gouache, at least, I'm used to it drying fast, and I'm used to being able to reactivate the paint even after it dries. So I really don't care if gouache dries fast. I can go over it and I can blend even after it's dry, but I can't do the same with acrylic. So instead of trying to fight the medium, I decided to embrace the medium for what it is, and I think that's where things started to shift for me. When you're trying to work with a new medium, it makes a lot of sense to understand how that medium works and to use it to do things that you can't normally do, right? Because I use gouache, and every medium has its pros and its cons, or it has its limitations. Let's not call it cons, it's just the features of that particular medium. So similarly, gouache also has its limitations. There are certain things I can't do because gouache is a medium that behaves a certain way. So with acrylics, what I found interesting was the texture that it could possibly bring to my paintings. That was something I really wanted to explore. I'm not sure what it is about acrylics that makes it behave this way. It's to do with the chemical composition of the medium itself, the binders that I used. So that, like I said, that's just a feature of the medium. I'm not a chemist. I don't know more than that at this point. But I can judge a medium by feel, and I can judge a medium by how it's behaving on my brush and how it behaves when I lay it down on my paper or on my canvas. And I decided to just kind of lean into that intuition and see where it takes me. I decided to work with the transparency of the medium and the fact that it can be layered a lot. And I just went with the flow, and I was able to bring a lot of texture and dimension into my painting, which is something that I loved so much. And let me be clear, even after my realization and my decision to embrace the medium, it's not that I didn't get frustrated after that. It's so easy to kind of just kick back into your habits with painting. And because gouache is the medium that I paint with the most, I have certain habits that have built which are associated with gouache as a medium. So when I'm shifting over to a new medium, I had to constantly remind myself that it's not going to blend the way gouache is going to blend. It's going to behave differently, and layering works very differently as well. So that was something I had to keep reminding myself. I did get frustrated at multiple points during this painting, but things did get better, and I know that I need to improve with the medium, and I was definitely disappointed with parts of the painting. I feel like I could have done a better job with it, but once I completed the feathery details, I think that's the part that I fell in love with the most. I know that the way I treated the medium for those feathery details is very unique to acrylics. I definitely wouldn't be able to paint with gouache the exact same way. If I were to create this bird with gouache, it's going to look very different because that medium is that way, and I would add in these details in a very different way. So that part was really interesting for me, and I think I really explored the medium. Another thing I liked was that I could keep dipping my brush into different colors without worrying about muddying them too much, especially if those colors are sort of being blended in the same area. I can't really do that with gouache. With gouache, I need to be very particular about keeping my colors more separate, and otherwise it's very easy for the colors to get muddy. And again, this gave me perspective on how my students feel. I have seen my students struggle with these aspects of gouache during my workshops or my online courses, and I feel like I can now understand that. I can understand why they're struggling with gouache in the way that they are, because now I have used a medium that a lot of my students are more comfortable with, which is acrylics. So I can understand why, if you're used to acrylic, gouache is going to feel very difficult. And that's true of any medium. If you're shifting from one medium to another, it's going to feel very difficult in the beginning. But like I said, the key is to remind yourself that it's a different medium and you can't work with it the exact same way. You have to be willing to put in a little effort to understand it, either by doing your own experimentation or by watching other people's videos, seeing how they treat the medium, or a combination of both of those things, which is what I did. I played with the medium myself a little bit, but I also watched a lot of different videos to understand and watch how people are working with it so that I could try to emulate that. Embrace a medium for what it is, allow that medium to shine in its own right. All of these mediums are popular because they are all very versatile and they are all very accepted by artists around the planet because of what they are capable of doing. So don't go into a painting process with a sort of blocked mindset or feeling like you're not going to be able to do well with this medium, or feeling like the medium is the problem. The medium is not the problem. You are probably the problem in this case. You just need to change your mindset and lean into it. And if not in the first 10 attempts, maybe in the 11th attempt, you're going to end up with something that you're proud of, because you just gave it that time and you went in with an open mindset. I think that's the most important thing. At the end of this process, I ended up with a painting that I'm actually pretty proud of, to be honest. Again, I would like to mention that there are parts that I'm a little disappointed with. I wish I did it better. But again, I remind myself that, hey, I can rework it because it's acrylic. I could possibly go over some of the parts that I'm not that happy with, and using transparent layers, I could try to make it better. So that's something I may or may not do, because I do like how it looks and I don't want to overwork it and ruin it. But yeah, I'm pretty happy at this point, and I'm glad that I got a dose of truth from my friend, and I'm glad I was able to open my mind to the medium and give it a chance. After my first acrylic painting attempt, I wasn't sure if I'm going to use the medium a lot after this, but after this attempt, I'm actually tempted to do a mini series with birds, because this was the first time I actually used it on my subject of choice, which is birds, and I love what I was able to create. And like I said, it's able to give a different dimension to my paintings than gouache is able to give me. Gouache is still going to be my first love, of course. I kind of feel like I'm cheating on gouache even while I speak these things, but I do think that I could be able to explore this medium in a sort of mini series. Let's see where that goes. For now, if you're interested in learning anything gouache from me, please check out the links in the description. I have loads of online courses, including a color mixing course, which you can apply to literally any medium. You don't have to be a gouache painter, you can apply it to anything. All the links to my courses are in the description box below, and I also have a really interesting course on sketching and painting birds in the works right now. It's going to be released sometime next month. Make sure you sign up to my newsletter. The link to that is also in the description box below, so that you don't miss the update once the class is out in the world. If you'd like to watch my exploration of acrylic from point zero to my very first painting with the medium, be sure to click the video on your screen right now. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.